In the midst of the pandemic, they were a lifeline to small businesses up and down the country. Government bounce-back loans we're talking about. They were handed out to keep everything from cafes to hairdressers solvent. Without them, who knows how many would have been forced to close their doors. But now business owners are quite literally paying the price for those loans. Many say the so-called bounce-back never happened, and as a result, their debts are simply crippling them. In total, 1.5 million loans worth almost £50 billion were handed out. Almost 2 years on, nearly a third of the businesses that initially took one have been struggling to pay back their debt. Although the government has said that repayment holidays are an option, many small business owners say they found it difficult to trade their way to repayment, and the debts are hampering their ability to invest. So I wonder if this is you and you're saying, at last somebody's talking about it. Did you take out a COVID bounce-back loan during the pandemic and it is hanging over you still? Or maybe you're saying, no, that saved me and the debt will sort out in due course. Let's talk first to Stephen Jackson, listener who runs a vintage tea shop on the beautiful Isle of Sheppey. Tell us, Stephen, what you did.
Yeah, hello, Jeremy. I took out, during the pandemic, I took out a bounce-back loan of $30,000, and up to now, I can't just afford to pay back even one penny, which is ridiculous.
Really? So you? Yeah. I remember we spoke during the pandemic, and of course the tea shop is going to have to close its doors in the worst of it. And you didn't find then when you reopened, you were making enough to put some by.
No, I haven't made any at all. And in fact, it's lunchtime now, and I've got two people.
Right.
Two people in tea rooms. Yeah, about 22 seats. So it's the present situation, it just can't go on, really. And I've had to take out my pension, which I was going to use when I retire. So I took out, that's all gone now as well. So I'm facing, maybe closure, I don't know. The summer's here, so maybe we'll get some more trade, I don't know.
So the loan was $30,000.
Yeah.
And you needed that to have any prospect of reopening.
Yeah, it certainly gave me a lifeline, which I'm thankful for, really am. But it's hanging over me now because I can't pay it back. And what would be nice if the government just said today, well, we're going to give you an extension of 2 years, because that's how long it's going to take for business to really bounce back. It's not really a bounce back loan. It wasn't a bounce back loan in that sense, because no one bounced back.
Mm. You ended up back where you started, or actually not in the same position.
Or maybe I'm worse, because what I should have done was just close my business just after the pandemic. I don't know.
So just tell us how much the payment is on the bounce back if you paid what they want.
600 a month.
600 a month, wow.
Yeah.
And the rent on the shop?
675.
And you've got, I guess you rent your house as well, do you?
Yeah, 500 a month.
So you're nearly, not quite, but heading towards 2,000 there.
Yeah, I'm in the same situation I was before. So I'm forced to sleep in the shop, save on petrol. It's just a continual circle of catastrophe. Mm. But I'm still happy. You've got to be happy. You've got to laugh at these situations. You can't let yourself be dragged down. But saying that, there must be hundreds of people even worse than I am. Believe it or not, they must be worse than I am, and they must be pulling their hair out right now.
I was half hoping that while we were talking, a customer would come in, but you still just got the two, have you?
I just got the two customers, yeah.
And it's tea and cakes. I've always thought I'd love to visit.
Sandwiches.
Yeah, I'd love to get down
teas. We make all our own bread, our own scones, our cakes. Everything's made on the premises. Customers have told me there is nothing more I can do for my business.
Yeah.
But it's still not working.
I understand. Well, I really hope it turns around, Stephen. I'd hate to see you close your doors.
Thanks very much, Jerry. Yeah. Well, I'm trying my best.
I could tell. Give a tremendously positive attitude as well. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you, Jerry.
Take care. Stephen Jackson. It breaks your heart, that, doesn't it? The vintage tea shop on the Isle of Sheppey. That's been his heart's desire to set that up after his previous career, and COVID has really knocked him for six. But the loan hasn't helped either, paradoxically. Alan Sodhi from the Federation for Small Businesses. That's a classic. I mean, you're thinking the government has got to just wipe out Stephen's loan or he's going to go under.
Well, this is the kind of pressure that so many small businesses are under. Jeremy, you heard the figures there that Stephen was saying for his business. And bearing in mind that, as he said, these were bounce back loans in many cases, but the bounce back has not happened and doesn't feel like it's happening because, first of all, if you think back, these loans started back in 2020. So in an early stage of the pandemic, they became repayable 1 year later. People had thought at the time, back in 2020, that by a year later, the pandemic would be over, or at least things would be reopened. People didn't envisage that there would be on-off lockdowns going on over a significant period of time. Off the back of all of that, once things were up and running again, of course, we then went straight into what many people were calling the cost of living crisis, but that is also a cost of doing business crisis, with small businesses seeing their energy bills shooting up, seeing inflation going up, and also the highest tax burden for 70 years. And so when you combine all of that, it's no wonder that people who took out these loans in good faith are now really feeling the squeeze. And although there's about 6.5% of those bounce back loans in arrears, but even those that look as though they're on schedule, that in some cases is only because the small business owner is prioritising paying that debt, but really, really being squeezed by their other costs.
There's a statement from the government about this, which we asked for, and they say businesses that received bounce-back loans can take advantage of the government's pay-as-you-grow measures, giving borrowers the option to repay the loan over up to 10 years. And you can, even on top of that, have further repayment holidays. Are people taking advantage of that, Alan?
About a third of those with bounce-back loans, Jeremy, are taking advantage of that. And pay-as-you-grow was something at the Federation of Small Businesses that we'd asked the government to do. And it was a good thing. It was a good response to allow some flexibility. So there are options within that, which include, as you say, extending the repayment from 6 years to 10. You can have a period of up to 6 months paying interest only if you talk to your lender. You can have a repayment holiday for up to 6 months, though you can only do that once during the course of repayment. So yes, pay as you grow is a positive thing, but there are still plenty of people who are struggling, even where they might take a 6-month payment holiday. They've then got to start repaying again. Also, it means the loan then is extended for longer. There's a 2.5% interest rate on that. So ultimately, they'll be paying back more the longer it takes for them to get there. And one other thing we think as well, Jeremy, is although this pay-as-you-grow is available for bounce-back loans, and they were by far the most popular form of coronavirus loan, but there was another type, which was the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, CBILs, as it was called, to use the jargon. The pay-as-you-grow doesn't apply to that, and we think that it should. And also because, unlike the bounce-back loans, those with the other type of loan are not necessarily on a fixed rate. And with interest rates where they are at the moment, many are seeing the cost of repaying those loans going up right now.
The other thing that happened was that as soon as they offered these bounce-back loans, which looked at the time like free money from the government because we were all in such a crisis, they got hit by an avalanche of fraud. And then, as the pandemic ended, the word we got was, and I think they may have changed this a bit because they had such a bad reaction, is we can't chase all the fraud, so we're going to have to write it off. So you're now in this bizarre situation where law-abiding borrowers are being chased and fraudsters aren't.
Yeah, I mean, these schemes, if you think about it, Jeremy, were set up at tremendous speed. The downside of that was inevitably that they would not be watertight. There was an element of fraud. I think sometimes the degree of that is perhaps overstated, but undoubtedly that was a thing. And not very many people who pretended to be a small business to get the money have been pursued. And really, that was pretty despicable for people who did that, pretending they had a small business when they didn't, when people who did really needed that money, really needed access to those loans, and were struggling to get through. So it was a factor. And it is galling, I guess, if where you're sitting there facing all of these heavy repayments. But I do think it's a bit overstated. These loans were a lifeline at the time, but we come back to the point. It was intended that the economy would have bounced back, would have been back up and running somewhere near where it had been before the pandemic, long before now. The fact is it isn't, and that is why we've got so many people struggling. And that is why the government should also look at the other cost pressures on businesses. Look at whether more small businesses could be taken out of business rates at the minute while they're struggling to pay back their loans. Look at what more can be done for those who are on the worst high rates of energy contract, where they fixed at the highest point last year. They should be able to have the right to negotiate with their their energy provider to go onto a newer contract with a lower rate now that the wholesale cost of energy's come down. Let's look at VAT as well. Maybe raise the threshold on that. Again, there are a lot of measures that the government could do that take away other cost pressures, while those who've got these loans are struggling to pay them.
Thank you very much. Alan Soddy from the Federation of Small Businesses. Simon is in southwest London. We're talking about bounce back loans. And when your business is failing because of COVID, you need the government money, you take the loan. But unless you're a fraudster, they are going to actually ask for the money back. Simon says, I took a bounce back loan of £8,000 during COVID. The company subsequently failed. I've now got a permanent PAYE job and I pay £150 every month. Many have advised me to inform the bank the company now ceases to exist, but I've been brought up to pay back loans in good faith. Yes, I wonder whether if the company fails, surely the loan disappears with it. Or do they chase you personally? Kevin in Aylesbury says, I took out a bounce back loan during the pandemic. I was one of the 3 million self-employed people excluded from any other help as the government thought we were a fraud risk. My business has since ceased trading and I have the loan hanging over me for the next 10 years. This is hard. Wayne in Manchester says, I know lots of people, including football managers, who took loans they never intended to and never will repay. It was £1 billion scam. The government must go in and get the fraudsters. Millions was also paid to companies that didn't even exist or reside in the UK. And I know the gentleman from the Small Business Federation, Alan Soddy, was saying is, maybe that the fraud has been overstated. The figure I heard was that it was 16 billion of fraud. What is amazing is when you have any new scheme, the number of criminals who penetrate it immediately. Look up the VAT carousel scheme and the complexities of that. You need a PhD to understand what they were doing. Paul in Essex, you had a bounce back loan.
Hi, Jeremy. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And we're in this weird situation where they write off the fraud, but not the honest loans. And that you're in that situation, you'd be paying how much?
So, I was one of those 3 million excluded that got zero support, and people still don't believe that we existed. But Rishi was just standing there and just telling the world he supported everyone. But we were running up credit card debt because it was the only way to buy food. So I took out, I was able to get a 10 grand bounce back loan, which we were using to pay standard bills and just buy food with. The irony is because there was no bounce back, we got to the end of the financial year, and HMRC declared that was now a director's loan, and I had to pay 32.5% interest on the bounce back loan.
I see. Yeah. Now that's the thing where if you borrow money from your company, they regard that as a personal loan done on market terms, don't they? So they get heavy about it. But so the bounce back loan went to the company, and you withdrew it and used for personal reasons.
Literally buying food.
No, I understand. Listen, I understand. So where are you now? Has the company gone down or not?
No, the company was as a private chef, so it kind of went into it snowballed for a little while. Because obviously, like the rest of the catering and hospitality, we were just chucked under the bus. So it has started coming back to life, and I am paying. So I took the payment holiday. I've now extended it over 10 years. Had a discussion with HMRC, so I'm also paying the interest over 10 years. The bizarre thing is once I've paid the bounce back loan back, I actually get the interest back.
Oh, really?
Which is
that's good, I suppose.
I'll go on holiday.
Great, how weird.
I know I'll get a holiday in 10 years' time, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, this whole thing is like nothing we've ever seen before, is it? So all of these things are completely first-time events.
Oh, do you know what? I can whinge and I can cry about the fact that I didn't get any furlough, I didn't get any this, I didn't get any that, and there's a lot of people that did really well out of it. But actually, I remember COVID lockdown as a time of sunshine, my family laughing, we did get money, and I am resentful about the fact, to a certain extent, about the fact that we've ended up with £35,000 worth of personal debt just through having to buy.
I understand
and stuff, but. some people are so poor, all they've got is money, and I remember a time of sunshine and a time of laughter.
That's true. I'm glad you feel like that, because it was a moment where, for some people, lucky enough, they got a bit of space outside. They got maybe a young family, and they suddenly had time they'll never have again.
Well, as a chef, I got to see the outside during daylight hours, and many did, and many of my industry have turned around and gone, we're not in this. We don't want to be doing the 80 hours stuck in for less than pay. I'm going to go and do my own thing. So the business is getting back. But the daft thing is that I'm on payment schemes with the mortgage people and the credit card people and all this kind of stuff, which we will sort out and battle through. I've paid my taxes for the last 35 odd years, but the whole bounce back loan thing just seems nuts that they're going to allow all that debt, all that fraud to get away with.
I know.
But they won't investigate those 3.5 million of us to see how many people they did miss.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Mike Craig runs a bounce back loan helpline. So do you speak to people every day, Mike?
Dozens and dozens, and I'm glad you're covering this topic, because it's a really interesting one, but one that not many people are chatting about, because it's not the type of thing you talk about when you're down the pub or in a cafe. Yeah.
It's debt. I suppose people might maybe find it embarrassing, but you must have people who are, have got £50,000 loan and they can only pay £10 a week or something.
Yeah, well, there's help and support there. And if anybody's in a dark place now listening to our conversation, I urge you to have a chat with the bank, because they can bend the rules of the scheme slightly to give you a little bit more support. They can knock the interest off, and not many people know this, things like that. But what I'm finding is a lot of the lenders, a lot of the major ones now, if you phone them up and say, look, I'm struggling, what they'll instantly do is give you a 30 days breathing space. So they won't hound you for 30 days, so you can get a little plan together. However, a lot of the major lenders are pushing people towards defaulting, because that, unfortunately, but is actually what plays out, is extra support then can come in, because what they'll do is they can put a claim in on the guarantee every quarter. They can put all the claims in, and the agreement is they get paid their money back off the government within 30 days of them putting that claim in. However, they then pass it over to the nominated debt collectors. Now, they can't come rattling at your doors for bounce back loan debt, so be aware of that. But what they can do is, if you do an income outcome type form, whatever is put on that form and is affordable, they'll snap your hand off, because it's going back to the government, because they've already paid out on the guarantee claim. So I have seen people, believe it or not, paying £5 a week on a £50,000 bounce back loan, because that is all they can afford. Now, there's another...
Just to clarify, if you write it off, they won't chase you for the rest of your life?
Well, what I'm finding now is playing out is the debt collectors, and this is important, have only got 12 months to try and contact you without coming to your door to set up a repayment plan. Now, after the 12 months, hardwired into the rules of the scheme is the debt collector has to back off. So after 12 months, it all stops. I've got people now saying, look, I've reached the end of that period and nobody's chasing me. Everything stops. The bank aren't chasing me. They're not going to, because they've had the money back.
Well, I can't go through it all now, but if they call the Bounce Back Loan Helpline website, they can get creative advice, right?
Right, check out it's MrBounceback.com. If you check the website, 2,500 pages of information on. You can call me on the helpline. I'm always available. Yep.
Thank you, Mike, very much indeed. That is really, really useful. Thank you. James emails, I was struggling to repay my loan, but there are so many options. I rang the bank. Now I pay an average of £25 a month. He says, don't bury your head in the sand. Speak to your bank and explore the options. It's like the last gentleman we had on who has the phone line. There are lots of options. Don't drown in this. Stuart in Staffordshire says, we've got 2 BBL loans. We received no other support during COVID and we're struggling to pay. This is where it gets difficult, is where if you're self-employed or you're in business under your own account, as they say, and you look across at maybe the public sector or whatever, and people who are on the staff, PAYE, and they got furloughed and they're not worried about it. That's where it gets really hard. Fiona in Surrey says, I'm a small business owner who took out a bounce back loan to keep my company going over lockdown. My issue is that some people have taken advantage, often taking out loans for new businesses hurriedly set up during the pandemic before they then close down and leave the public with the debt. That is the scam, isn't it? Where you set up a business, you claim the bounce back loan, you crash the business, you walk away. Stephen Stonehaven, though, is positive. He says, I can't talk any higher of the government's bounce back loans. They were crucial.